to be a man in today's society? What are the difficulties?
Let's see. There's no point in getting married anymore because divorce is basically incentivized. Why would an aging woman who's losing her sexual market value want to be with a man when she could just take his money and his children and his house? You can't be sexual at all to women anymore, else you might get canceled. Everyone believes women when they make false rape allegations, and even if they're proven to be not true, your reputation is still damaged for life. A woman with buyer's remorse can basically just make false claims or exaggerated claims about you, and you're damaged for life. Women want you to do and provide everything for them and change into whatever they want you to mold into, but don't want to change at all themselves. And society praises this. Women always talk about how they want a man above 6 feet, but when a man talks about how he wants a fit chick, he's body shaming. Nobody has our backs, not even our brothers. Men destroy men in the name of women because they bite night. We're completely disposable in today's society and nobody cares.
Do you really want to know why 80% of divorces are filed by women? Because it's not adultery and it's not abuse. We know that adultery occurs at virtually identical rates in marriages, and we know abuse occurs at virtually identical rates. In fact, if anything, abuse against men by their wives is far, far underreported. So if there's not a disproportionate amount of abuse or cheating, why is there a disproportionate amount of women filing for divorce? Do you know what the number one factor predicting divorce is? Do you know what the number one factor or life event immediately preceding a divorce is? The husband losing his job, losing his business, or experiencing a major mental health crisis such as severe depression. You see, because men love women for who they are and women love men for what they can provide. You see, women aren't interested in your struggles and they're not interested in helping you through your struggles. They wait at the finish line and pick the winners. And the one right women always reserve is the right to change their mind, often changing the horse they're betting on mid-race. Only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. That's why they file 80% of divorces.
So that's my idea of the patriarchy, which is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
A very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper-successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
There it is. There it is right there. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and highest honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Lakakadash. Double honors to the Apostle Elders, the great millstone, and rule well. Salutations to you, brothers that preach, teach, and prophesy His word, truth, and sincerity. It's the brother Aryaga from the Grand Rapids, Michigan camp. As we continue to put our lives on the line to educate those of the elect and bring you this word and this truth. Here we are with another interesting lesson. This one is definitely going into, basically what it is like to be a man in this society. What it's like to be a man in Babylon. There's nothing fair about it. Someone can say, oh, well, they got all these freaks and these hoes and, they got, hey, man, it's all kind of ass out here you can get. Yeah, but like he said, there's only a certain demographic that has access to those things, to this kingdom, to this world. When you don't have access to this world, you over the spirit and the spiritual nature. The world, as the scriptures say, doesn't recognize you as its own. And when you get placed into that demographic, you don't have access to the things that people of the world have access to. Hell, even the men of this world have very little access to it, because everything comes at a cost. And part of that cost being your manhood, because if you want access to the women of this society and all the perks that it has, you have to put your masculinity on the line. You have to take your masculinity and put it in a box and put it in the shelf, push it to the back, and put the top on the box. Because a masculine man in this society, unless he's a wicked man, and a very adulterous man, or just a wild man, or a nigga, so to speak, you don't have access to all of this so-called free ass that's out here, or access to a lot of the things that this world has to offer. Because the vibration of this world is so wicked that unless you move in that same wicked manner, as the Bible says, wise as serpents, but harmless as doves, if you don't perform in that same wicked manner, then you don't have access to the things that this world all has to offer. So being a man in this world has nothing to do with success and, having a penis and, being the dominant sex. It has nothing to do with that anymore. Now you gotta pander women just to get some box. You gotta lower and degrade yourself just to be noticed. Okay? There's things that you have to do that a man shouldn't do just to get a used and abused piece of box. Scarred up, beat up box. And the woman that's attached to it and all the problems that she has to offer. Not even what you desire. Because the ones that they get the ones that they desire, the desirables, go to the wickedness of the society, or they are into women and not men. Okay? So let's get into it.
I got expelled from my old school for fucking my teacher. Yay! I hooked up with my Uber driver while my boyfriend was passed out in the backseat. Yay! I fucked my ex's best friend and he still doesn't know. Yay! The school thinks my sugar daddy is my real dad because he signs me out every week. Yay! I had a crush on my teacher, so I started dating his son so I could come over. Yay!
I have to play that before I got into it because this is what you have. When you ask a man what it's like to be a man in this kingdom, we don't have much of a choice. We don't have much of a choice at all. These are the things that we are forced to accept. Right? All right, so it leads to this. Did a lesson on this some years ago. All right, but that was like 5 different accounts on YouTube ago. All of them which have been shut down since then. Rome in America, feminism destroys, right? And this is a topic that continuously arises because it's only getting worse and worse. See, Rome, or America, is Rome reincarnated. I'm going to take you on a little history lesson real quick. All right? Let's get it. Yeah, so let's go to the scriptures with this. All right, so if you're familiar with let's see, Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And this is why I'll refer you to this excellent picture right here from Great Millstone. One of the brothers made this some years back. The beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns is NATO. All right, the 7 heads equals 7 governments or kings ruled by Esau, aka the so-called white man. All right. So you had Germania Major, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Minor, the British, and the Greeks. All right. And America is that reincarnated beast. These nations make up the beast that is speaking of in Revelation 13. Wasn't talking about some literal dragon coming out of the sea or what have you, like they might teach in church if they teach it in church. But the point is, let's jump down to Revelation 13:3. And I saw one of his heads, and it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And the world wondered after the beast, right? Because, as you know, the Roman Empire was done away with. Okay? When the Roman Empire fell, what sprouted up from the ashes of the Roman Empire was America. They take on the same values, the court system, the agriculture, even the construction, the buildings, okay? The very heart of Rome ran on democracy. And the heart of this kingdom is founded in democracy, all right? And by being founded in democracy, there are certain rules to the game that have been added. And democracy itself empowers women, right? And we're going to get into it. But this is the reincarnation of Rome, America, which is AKA Babylon, the harlot. You understand? So, let's get back to that article real quick. All right. So it says, read that again. Rome and America, feminism destroys. So I'm going to cut through this as quick as possible. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I advise you to check it out. All right, Rome and America, feminism destroys. It says, unfortunately, feminism and future is an oxymoron, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. And it seems to be unsustainable on a long run. Based on past history, it appears that the civilization that embraces feminism, a civilization that embraces feminism, values will cease, or feminist values will cease to exist in just a few centuries. This is why we have never seen a feminist civilization, aside from very short spans at the end of the Roman Empire and possibly a few other more ancient civilizations. All right? And, you know, when it comes down to how society functions and works, Kevin Samuels put it quite correctly, that when it comes to maintaining a country, how it works in the development of a country or a nation, men play the 80% role of that. That 80% to the 20% that women provide is a large difference. You know, if it was just men and they had to provide for themselves, they would be able to do that their half and a woman's half 3 times over. The point is made is that feminism is liberation from the system that was created originally. And if you try to, let's say, for instance, a car is meant to run on unleaded gas. Now, better yet, it's meant to run on premium. You got a nice car. Let's say you got a Maybach, and you try to put unleaded into that gas tank. It's going to mess that car up eventually because it was meant to run on the premium gas, the highest grade gas that you can put into it. Okay? Even more so is when you try to change up how something was originally created to function and given an ulterior function to try to change everything about it, it's going to fail because the foundation of something is meant to continue so it can maintain everything that's being built on top of it. The values of a country were founded on the ideals of men. All right, even this country, some of the values they took were founded upon the Bible outside of that chattel slavery. But nonetheless, um, when you have anything changing or warping its original purpose, the outcome is always going to be bad. It's always going to be negative. So reading the history of the Roman Empire brings such glaring similarities with our own civilization. It is as if human dynamics are literally stuck in a cycle that repeats every couple thousand years. There were two matriarchal, extremely advanced civilizations, one at the end of the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, one possibly at the end of Babylon 4,000 years ago. For those who enjoy history, here's a short recap, blah, blah, blah. 5th century BC. Roman civilization is a strong patriarchy. Fathers are liable for the actions of their wife and children, meaning a man to get in trouble for what their children and their wife did. They'll come straight to the man. You wouldn't get in trouble with who's our husband? Who's your father? All right? So the honor of the family rolled strictly by the man's name. It says, and have absolute authority over the family, including the power of life and death. So it was in the father's hands to put somebody even in his own family to give him life or death. Then we had 1st century BC. Roman civilization blossoms into the most powerful and advanced civilization in the world. Material wealth astounding. Citizens, i.e. non-slaves, do not need to work. They have running water, baths, and import spices from thousands of miles away. The Romans enjoy the arts of philosophy. They know and appreciate democracy, commerce, science, human rights, animal rights, children's rights, and women become emancipated. All right, and they transfer over into a whole nother power structure. All right. No-fault divorce is enacted and quickly becomes popular by the end of the century. So with the no-fault divorce, regardless of what a woman does, like she cheats, oh, well, it's no fault, so y'all could just divorce and she gets a portion of your belongings. Like the dude was saying, with divorce, women have the no fault, and they can default you and be middle-aged and take everything you have. Decide to want to be free and liberated and take your house, your car, and everything that you have, and you end up with nothing while she fucks some other guy in your car and in your house. That's the way the system is set up. 1st, 2nd century. The family unit is destroyed. Men refuse to marry. And the government tries to revive marriage with a bachelor tax to no avail. In other words, they were trying to get them to remarry so much, like they are now, that they taxed men that were single. Bachelor tax. And that shit didn't work. Children are growing up without fathers. Roman women show little interest in raising their own children and frequently use nannies like you see today, or daycares. And they say, oh, we out here getting a career, and your mind wasn't set aside to do these different things and neglect the family structure. You choosing your career over your family, or just pleasure over family, and that wasn't it. But in this society, they encourage women to do that. Because these other women that have no morals and values especially, they encourage the women, the decent women, the wholesome women to do wickedly. I've seen it all throughout my life, right? All throughout my life. Damn. It says, the wealth and power of women grows very fast, while men become increasingly demotivated and engage in prostitution and vice. They rather purchase a prostitute. You had cats out here feeding on other women, adultery. You had people out there just taking the box. All right, they was out there raping. It got to that point because women got so empowered that it demotivated men. Well, what do they need protection from? And this was at a time where, we're dying on the battlefields while they're sitting back collecting all kind of money, riches, wealth, all right, like it is now. And it's still, like Jordan Maxwell was saying, more men and say, oh, well, they got women on the battlefield. That is not anywhere compared to what is probably like 15%. The rest of that percentage is men, which it should be, because men were created to deal with that type of stress and trauma, like war. Women weren't built for that. They were built to nurture, to run the household instead of the man while he's out. Make sure everything is continuing on as it should. They even talk about a virtuous woman in the times buying land. While the man is away in these battles and these wars, they back making boss moves for the family, not for themselves, not for this society's wickedness. All right. Let's see. The wealth and power of women grows very fast. Oh yeah, prostitution and homosexuality become widespread. And here, fast forward to 2021, what do you see? You see legalized gay marriages and sex change operations. All right, hormonal replacement therapy. Okay, all kinds of abominations. A moral and demographic collapse takes place. Roman population declines due to below replacement birth rate. Right now, the birth rate in this country is at an all-time low. Unlike the baby boom era, because that's what you do to determine if a nation is prospering or not. You look at the offspring. You look at the increase in the rate of children being born. That tells you, hey, men and women are clicking, our nation is growing, you know what I'm saying? But it's at a sharp decline now. The lowest, like I said, it's ever been for all nations in this place. It says, vice and massive corruption are rampant. While the newborn Catholic religion is gaining power, it becomes the religion of the empire in 380 AD. There is extreme economic, political, and military instability. There are 25 successive emperors in half century. Many end up assassinated. The empire is ungovernable and on the brink of civil war. Right? 5th century AD, the empire is ruled by an elite of military men. They use the emperor as a puppet. Due to massive debts and financial problems, the empire cannot afford to hire foreign mercenaries to defend itself. Roman citizens have long ago been being replaced by mercenaries in arms, right? Because if you are not replacing your birth, your young to old man ratio with these military positions, you're gonna have to hire other soldiers. Why? Because your civilization growth, and your birth rates are down. So now you gotta seek to hire other nations to represent your nation, to fight for you in battle. It says, eventually the mercenaries figure out that the emperor has no clothes and overrun and pillage the empire. All right, and that's what happened, because once they figured out that he had, one, no money to pay them, and two, no way to protect themselves. You have the whole empire ran by women. I have a picture on my phone, and it shows what happens. Matter of fact, I don't even know if it's on my computer, but it shows a depiction of that, and it shows the Huns and these different nations ripping and tearing through Rome, pillaging, looting, and plundering, raping women and taking them. And it was actual painting of it. You know, that's what took place, and that's what's taking place now, right before your eyes. You seeing the very same thing happen again because history repeats itself. As humanity falls back into the Bronze Age, think eating squirrel meat and living in a cave. You know, original cavemen, as history would show it, is the original red man, or the so-called white man, was Esau Edom. 12 centuries of religious zealotry, but point in being, everything went back, okay? And it says right here, 1700 to 1920, America. The family unit is essentially father knows best, and exploiting women is considered the height of shameful behavior, even if it is done by the woman herself. So being a hoe, or taking a woman and making her act like one, or a freak, or a hussy, a floozy, whatever you want to call it, that was looked down upon. Where women were respected because they were women, not because of their assets. Women were placed on a higher pedestal, expected to use her mind in class. Men valued and respected her. Any man who didn't was quickly isolated from the community and will ruin the family's reputation. Monogamy is held as the ideal arrangement without exception. All right, this is in the beginnings of America. So a relationship between a man and a woman, that was the norm. Also, note the men during this era were men. They served in the military, had education, a family to support, and their own weapons and property, all by their early 20s. Mind you, having your own property is actually wealth. Having cattle and crops and these things, that was actual wealth, okay? 1920 to 1970. America's rising to the height of her power, a superpower being born, an economic and military power henceforth unseen in all recorded history, while the world digs out from under the rubble of constructive wars and communism. We have a battalion of aircraft carriers, a largely homogeneous population, and cheap housing for everyone willing to put in an honest day's work. It says, but the poison pill has been swallowed. The suffering movement achieves its main goal, and the dark shroud of their equality era is about to descend. In academic halls and classrooms, lessers are pedestrianized, while betters are denigrated. And the things that this school system is going through now, that started back in the 70s, or like it said right there, what was that, 20s to 70s, where these schoolhouses really started turning into garbage. All right, because usually the mother and father will raise their children up and teach them, and you will go to school and they will reinforce those values. All right, now to this day, they give these children the same test, sometimes just as an experiment. They gave them the same test that they had back in the day, back in the ancient days. I think that was like in the 1920s. And even children that are these young adults that are in college and college graduates still can't pass that test because they actually had actual education. And with that education, it led them to lead more successful lives. But now we're in a recession, and as we recess or we go back into a primal state of being, now you're starting to see this society crumble around us, 1970 to 2000. the scourge of single motherhood, free and easy divorce, child support laws. And that child support is a monster because if you fall back and you have to pay those back payments and child support for your own child, that especially if you are one of those individuals that's already supporting them anyway, but you're suffering because the mother wanted to be independent, you know, they can go and they can require you to make them payments even until you're an old man on your dying deathbed. They can garnish wages, they can garnish any kind of extra money, even in the pandemic, because you owe back tax or you owe back child support for the child that a lot of good men are decent men are still in that child's life and give their mother money and try to take care of that child. That separation is brought because all the power goes to the mother in this society. Very rarely to the father. Very, very, very rarely. It says the ultimate expression of anti-discrimination. It says child support laws, majority female colleges, as you see now, gay marriages, and infinitude. In short, the ultimate expression of anti-discrimination, anti-received wisdom, individualism, ideology, ironically, buttressed by a group, think of diversity mongers. It says lessers ignore their betters, which you see that continuously. Because you have lesser people that they talking shit to people that are educated. What did you see? Kevin Samuels also points that out. You got women talking about, I don't want no broke ass man. And they'll be broke. They want a high value man, you know, which isn't interested in them. But the average man, average blue collar male is the one that keeps this society running. He works in your power plants and does the construction. He does the police. He works in the police force or the military. You see what I'm saying? But that's not the ones they want. They want to deal with the high value men, driving the big nice cars and, you know, are the upper echelon, part of the 1% of this society, right? So that's also part of that, you know, lessers ignore their betters, who in turn renege on their traditional responsibility to act as examples for the lesser. And you have no real examples for the younger crowds coming up. That's why that's so wicked. All right? So I'm going to just get straight to the point with these scriptures because, you know, that in itself is a vivid depiction of why, you know, this society makes it so hard to be a man. I mean, it's damn near impossible. At least a responsible man. This is why these things were set in order. This is why this order was set into stone by the Heavenly Father. And without that order, without the proper way this place was built to function, all you have is chaos. Genesis 3:16. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. And sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And all those great empires, when they were founded, and at the height of their power, that's what it was. Those were the values and the ideals that were perpetuated. Deuteronomy 24:1, when a man has taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorce and give it to her hand and send her out of his house. So you have real life consequences. If you wasn't fulfilling that role that we got married to do, because a man, no matter what, is always going to have to be the protector and the provider. Without a doubt, no matter what. And if the woman doesn't fulfill her end of the bargain, then you give her a bill of divorce and she would leave with everything she came, which was nothing. You know? So having those real life consequences established, you wasn't freely going and divorcing. A woman being able to divorce the man, that was unheard of. Because they wouldn't have dared done anything to that, bringing shame to themselves. So a lot of the times, they would end up having to be prostitutes because they wasn't established for a woman to be able to open up all of these businesses and do all of these things. The government supported the original role as it was established, and that's why everything was flourishing. It says, and when she departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. It says, and if the latter husband hate her, write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house. Or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband which sent her away may not take her again and be with his wife because she's polluted. The scriptures say how polluted is that land. You know, when you lose that woman and she goes and she becomes another man's, he's gonna fill her up with his seed, whether to have children or just having casual sex. But regardless, that same semen is known even to this day to reside in that woman for up to 15 years to the rest of her life. They even found semen behind women's retinas, her eyeball, and her brain stem. You see what I'm saying? So the more men that go into it, the more defiled she becomes. All right? And so the Most High set it up like, no, you can't get this because she's going to be damaged. Seed carries spirit. That the semen is alive. And it carries spirit. So something to be alive, it has to have a spirit. Correct? And so, she's taking on customs and ways of that other man because she have a piece of him living in her, which in return is going to cause her to do and say things just like that other man. She's carrying a piece of that man with her forever. It says, and after that she is defiled, for that is an abomination before Yahweh. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which Yahweh hath given thee for an inheritance. And that was causing the land to sin. You causing the land of horse and whoredom, which you see now, because they have absolutely, positively no values. All right. Let's see. So, and this is primarily for you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Natives, because, you know, especially starting with the so-called black woman down to the Native and Latino women, they're so liberated that they're completely against their men, which was all by design, because this system was built to do that to them, to get them so, you know, depending on the government, whether it be in schooling or aid or whatever it may be, that it completely put them against us as men, which it was gradual. Started with WIC and went down from there. And the so-called black woman is the only nation that are completely, for the most part, against their men, at odd ends with their men. Unlike all the rest of these nations, that women are behind them. You know, Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Oh, and that's what you see right now. Women rule over us. So-called black women represent the so-called black man. All right? And then you can see that even in the Oscars. Who won the first Oscar? A so-called black woman for playing a mammy role and going with the wind. You had men that were doing prestigious roles, and just like Denzel Washington were turned down for those powerful roles, and they picked a so-called black woman, which is historical fact now. So the first so-called black person to win an Oscar was a so-called black woman, Hattie, and for playing the mammy, the slave mammy. But you see that in many facets of this society as a representation of its men. All right, and all the other nations, they're represented by their men. This is the only nation, these so-called Negroes and now Latinos and natives, that are represented by their women. Okay? So they took the men all the way out of the formula. You look at the book, The Makings of a Slave by Willie Lynch. The letters of Willie Lynch, in his journal, and The Making of a Slave is heavy. And you see those ideals being applied to this very day. It says, Jeremiah 31:22, how long wilt thou go about, O thou backsliding daughter? For Yahweh hath created a new thing in the earth, a woman shall compass a man. And compass means to go around. So when you're going around, the way the system was initially created to function, then you're basically going around this original ability to function at tip-top shape, at its peak shape, and begins to deteriorate. Hosea 4:14. I will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses when they commit adultery. For themselves are separated with whores, and they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore, the people that thou doest not understand shall fall. And that's where we fell as a people, because we are not a nation of whoredoms. And when we start going back, like I said before, on the original foundation that you was created on, then all that takes place is gradual deterioration. And as it continues to deteriorate, then you'll start seeing the collapse from inside out of a society, because it has no proper foundation. Hosea 4:14, I will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses when they commit adultery. For themselves are separated with whores, and they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore the people that do not understand shall fall, and our people in the whole do not understand. And so we're falling. We're falling because, one, we turn our backs on the Heavenly Father and His Son, and we forgot our original law, statutes, and commandments that was created for us to give us order in the whole. And since that took place, we've always been in a degraded state. But America, it being the wicked place that it is, was always founded on bloodshed, whoredoms, rape, riots, pillage, and murdering. So it only makes sense that it was going to be a temporary kingdom, because it didn't go based upon the ideals of how a successful empire should be ran. And us, as the Lord's chosen people, you so-called natives, Latinos, and Negroes, known as the Israelites, the Heavenly Father is bringing His Lord back to redeem us, or the elect of His people, who repent and do their best to rehearse those righteous acts that we were established on in our homeland. They say we got grace, but we only have a short period of time. That window is closing. Because once the Lord comes back, you can't say, okay, I'm ready to get it together now. It's too late. All right? We look forward to the day of judgment, because that's the only thing that's going to balance this place out and bring back the old ways. All right? Yeah, let's get it. I'm going to read this. We're going to call it a wrap. 1 Corinthians 7:1. Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have their own husband. So that's the thing, too. All right? The reason Paul was getting at that is because get to it and understand and bring understanding on it further down. But you know, he was a single man. He gave his time to the Lord. You know, he wasn't confounded by the thoughts of this world so much. Let's continue. 1 Corinthians 7:3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. Hey, when it's time to hit, you shouldn't have a say-so in it unless you was on your menstruation or sick. Y'all come, you know, when a man wanted to pop his wife, that's what it was. And you was supposed to go into your wife, you know. Not, oh, you don't want to do this and that. Well, I'm holding the box back from you. No, that was unheard of. 1 Corinthians 7:4, the wife have no power over her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath no power over his own body, but the wife. It don't mean that the wife was, oh, you better give me some dick now. No. It meant that the husband still had to go on his wife. Matter of fact, it was the husband's job to implant seed in her so they can have offspring. Because why? That's the natural use of a woman. And when you left off from utilizing the woman for her natural use and made her into just a straight up cum dumpster, that's when things started deteriorating in society, because that's not her original purpose to be created for. A man is always created to be that provider, okay? And you provide for your family. But that it's been thrown out of course. It says, defraud you not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. And you know, you don't go into your woman and she has these natural needs, and here come Johnny, you know, Johnny come lately. All you gonna do is start cutting into her, and that's when, you know, Satan or Tazarak can get in between that and put that heavy, put those and that's my ball I'm sitting on. For you think, damn, you over here farting and shit. No, I'm sitting on the exercise ball, but it's good for your back. But nonetheless, that's why you had to go into your woman. You know what I'm saying? Straight up. Because you had no woman, I would put that to them, unless she did something so wrong that you put her away. You know, but if she's doing what she's supposed to do, you give her a due benevolence. You go ahead and get it. 1 Corinthians 7:6, but I speak this by permission and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath his proper gift in the Most High. One after this manner and another after that. All right, so, you know, it's a lot of BS that's cut out the middle when you don't directly have to deal with a wife and everything that comes with it. You can give your full attention to the Lord. It says, I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn. Right, so get you a woman. You got an affection to a woman, you know, go out there and get you a woman, not a hoe or a harlot, if that were the case. Now that's damn near impossible. But that was the point, you know. And unto the married I command ye, not I, but Yahweh, let not the wife depart from her husband. So they had gave them a free right to just divorce whenever they chose to, you know. These are the law, statutes, and the commandments the Heavenly Father set up to bring order. Okay? And I'm going to say it right here. I'm going to end it off right here. 1 Corinthians 11:9. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. Period. And when we left that, now the man is doing everything. He's playing the woman's role down there. You got hundreds and hundreds of suitors for every one woman, when women outnumber men. That's crazy. To like 6-1 in the world. That's crazy. But you got hundreds of men on one woman. women dealing with women, you know. 1 Corinthians 11:11, nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man, and Yahweh. You can't even come before Yahweh. If you have a relationship, it was established that it better be a man and a woman, you know. That was the only way that you had access to the Lord. You couldn't have the same-sex marriages that prosper now. That was against his rules. All right, because that's disorder. So with that, you know, when she asked that question, it just really got my spirit to going and thinking. Like, yeah, when you ask a man what's it like to be a man, yeah, it's not very easy in this society. But nonetheless, we keep powering forward to find favor.
What is it truly like?
You ready?
We power forward.
What is it truly like to be a man in today's society? What are the difficulties?
Let's see. There's no point in getting married anymore because divorce is basically incentivized. Why would an aging woman who's losing her sexual market value want to be with a man when she could just take his money and his children and his house? You can't be sexual at all to women anymore, else you might get canceled. Everyone believes women when they make false rape allegations, and even if they're proven to be not true, your reputation is still damaged for life. A woman with buyer's remorse can
So that's pretty much the gist of it. So I pray you will edify. And to the next time, stay vigilant, endure, and pray hard as hell that the Lord come back soon. With that, I bid you shalom.